Here we are at home, the way of compassion. So we have begun a journey, and this journey is going to take us through really the whole path to enlightenment. Lamrim Chenmo, as we've talked about in the past, has this incredible opportunity to take whatever teaching in Buddhism, whether it be Theravadan or Zen, or you'll find actually Dharma and other traditions as well, and see where it fits on the whole path. So whatever teaching we get, we can say, oh, that fits here. Oh, I get that. That goes here. It's really easy to get lost in Buddhist teachings. There's so many teachings. There's so many texts. There's all these opportunities to go on retreats. And where does that fit into my daily life? How's this really help me progress? And am I going in circles, or am I on a path? Am I in circles, or am I on a path? So here, this is just a laid out, very structured, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And really wonderful opportunity to have the full view. Even though we might be here, it's nice to have the full view. So we know where we're going, and we know as we receive teachings where they are on the path. And in order to really have a solid foundation, first we have to have some understanding of the teachings that we have, that they're valid. So we talked a bit about, really, at the start, the quality of these teachings, the lineage of these teachings, the fact that there's demonstrated results that have happened over thousands of years for many people. And that the compilers of these teachings were very well qualified, very well trained. And that this lineage has been passed down accurately. And so we've explored that a bit. Then we looked at if these teachings are good, well, what about the qualities of teachers? And can we find a qualified teacher? Is there a teacher that really can lead us on this path? And there's these 10 qualities that we really want to look for and make sure that that's a qualified spiritual mentor for us. And within these teachings, they say it's not a waste of 10 years to look at someone for about 10 years to find out if they're a qualified teacher. That you want to really look behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz, What's behind the curtain? What's under the hood? Do they show up in a way that accurately reflects what they're teaching? And so to really investigate that, not to be in a rush, which is separate from, going and hearing a teaching. We can go and hear teachings, that's fine. And we're talking about developing this relationship of someone that can take us on a journey. Making sure they're really qualified, somebody we can rely on. And if we don't have that at this point, well, we can really call to mind the Buddha as somebody to rely on. That here was a being that taught a path to no more suffering, and there are accurately and authentically transcribed teachings that lead you to that path, and you'll find them in different texts. So if we don't have that direct spiritual mentor, it's nice to know that we have the Buddha, and they show up in a variety of forms and teachings, and encouraged to make sure that you take some time to investigate the origins of these teachings too. That this text has some substance to it, some authenticity, and just be very careful, because there are opportunities to be misled on a path, and there are very well-meaning people who maybe want to really help, but maybe haven't really received the full scope of teachings themselves and those opportunities. So it's important to have a discerning mind that's real clear. Say, does this hold up? Does this make sense? Are there some demonstrated results? Is there a path here? In the West, we're very big on science. We're very big on cause and effect, and let's see what the results are. So let's, pay attention to, are there other teachers here that have done this path? Are those teachings coming from someone who studied? Are these books that I'm reading, what's their source? And look under that. It's important. It's important to check that. And then use a discerning mind to check it out. The real common analogy within Buddhism is that you should test these teachings like a goldsmith checks gold. He's going to test it, he's going to cut it, he's going to rub it and make sure it holds up. And so we really want to make sure that's true, because if we're going to make any progress, we need to be firmly rooted, that we have some faith. And this faith isn't blind faith. This faith is rooted in a demonstrated test and result, and something that we can actually rely on. If we're not going to rely on it, if we can't really rest in it, it's going to be really hard to make progress, because what we'll do is, this feels good, I'll do that. And this feels good, well, I'll do that. Well, here's this other retreat, maybe I'll go do that. And instead of making a path, we're back in a circle. And if we really rely only on the teachings that resonate with us, it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It gets really comfortable as we go for another cycle of samsara and waste a precious opportunity to really cultivate the gold of this lifetime. So we really want to find a rooted faith, and not a faith in, it's in this book and therefore, or this teacher said that and therefore. It needs to be, I heard this and this appears to be authentic, and so I'm going to take some time and I'm going to apply my contemplative powers to it. I'm going to see if it makes sense, and I'm going to test it. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to put this to the test. And if we do that, we may find there's a path for you. We may find there's something I can rely on. And you're going to be able to rely on it much more firmly, with much more resolve if we've tested it. So it's kind of like, in this culture, some people go to college and they want a college degree. And, it's nice to check out the accreditation of the college that you're going to. It's nice to check out the certifications of, if we're going to an MD, right, a doctor. Well, it's kind of nice to see there's something hanging on his wall from a medical school, and it says that. Or if we're going for, any of those types of qualifications, we're going to check it out. Same way with our spiritual life. We want to make sure that that's applicable, that it's has some proven paths. So within that, the text, you can just see where they just start at the start, in the sense that if I'm going to get anywhere in a path, I need to have some reliance on a path. I need to have a path that's going to get me somewhere, and I need to have really an understanding of the bigger picture of this path, and then really investigate it. So that's where it starts. So qualities of teachings, quality of teacher, and then the student. So we covered that as well, qualities of a student, which all of you have. The qualities of a student, we have a discerning mind. We can read and write. You have this rare and precious human rebirth we talked about last week. We'll just touch on. But the qualities of a student is also the idea that you're going to put something into practice. That you'll be here with an open but discerning mind. Not a mind that just swallows anything. A mind that's open to potentials but discerning and checking. So that we have that mind, that I'm here with good intentions, but I'm here with the idea that I want to really use this path. I want to check it out. And then, having had the qualities of a teacher, qualities of a student, we put together, and we talked about, if I'm going to make progress, what are these preparatory practices? We covered how to really transform our meditative experience in the most conducive environment. And once we've done that, now we're on the topics of meditation. And the idea here is, what do we meditate on? If I'm starting here and I want to become enlightened and be a Buddha, well, where do I start? So here's the topics of meditation. And the idea is that we take some time and we go through 3 wisdoms. First one, hearing a teaching, receiving a teaching. Second one, contemplating, see if it holds up. Test it. Does that make sense? Does this hold up? What about this? Is that true? Does it seem to work? Contemplate it, analyze it, tear it apart. And if it does, and you gather some sense of truth in that, well, we meditate on that, and we let that feeling arise in us, and it goes from an intellectual idea to a realization, an embodied realization. And so that's the idea, is that each topic that we bring in, you want to take some time and think about it and meditate on it. So last week we talked about the first topic of meditation, the rare and precious human rebirth. There's 18 pieces to it, 18 points to it. There's 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, and you all have it, which is pretty rare and precious, as it would imply. Opportunity and leisure, they talk about. And this is just a point that we really, if we don't get this, it's hard to really make much progress. And that is, when we reflect on these 18 points, and let's just put it real simply, that right now, you have every conducive environment to be enlightened right now. Very few human beings have this, and of all sentient beings, very few are human. I mean, think about how many ants there are in the world. Think about, all the life forms in an ocean. Think about how many living beings there are, and then of all those, how many are human. And in a Buddhist perspective, there's heaven realms and other realms and all that. And of all those, there's a smidgen of human. And out of the 7 billion human, there's just a small fraction that have a rare and precious human rebirth, that have all the conducive environments, that you're here, you have the ability to read, write, think, you have access to Dharma, you have access to a path. You're living in a time where teachings of enlightenment are actually translated in English, that you can actually click on a YouTube and listen to His Holiness the Dalai Lama explain to you the nature of phenomena. We have this. This is not something that was easily found anywhere at any time. This was something that people would travel miles on foot to get a teaching. This is something that in our own lifetime here, it wasn't available in English unless you really worked. And that which was in English was translated roughly. And then there was no one to explain it. And then the context. And here we are at a time where we have, at the click of a button, it's funny, I have a cell phone here, right? These are smartphones, right? Mine's semi-smart, I think. But I could right now punch in and have access to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, 17th Karmapa. I can, my teacher, Geshe Gelsen, he's in his physical form now, reincarnated, but I could pull up a teaching from him and watch it right here. And yet, we spend a lot of time watching silly cat videos, right? Yeah. It's amazing. There was I think I saw some comic thing. It said, imagine, like this guy comes back from like the 20s or something, and they say, and we tell him, right now, we have a device that can answer virtually any question you have in life. It's at your fingertip. Well, what do you do with it? Well, mostly I watch silly cat videos and post pictures on Facebook. But the thing about that is that this precious opportunity, we need to know what its real ability is. And its real ability is right now, in this moment, we can obtain both our immediate goals and our ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is to actually remove suffering from your life and all other sentient beings. And this form right now has all of those potentials right now. And you've worked many lifetimes to get it. This does not come easy. This doesn't come because without a cause, no effect. It just doesn't arise. Nothing just arises. If we want a result, we need a cause. So to have a rare and precious human rebirth, one in which you have access to the Dharma teachings, you have the ability to read and write, you have access, you have leisure time. Well, okay, most of our 7 billion don't have leisure time. Most of them are trying to just survive. Can't read and write. Those that can, a lot of countries don't have access to Dharma. In a lot of countries, there's nothing around with a text that's going to lead them to enlightenment. And some countries don't even allow anything. And then here in the West, where we have opportunity and leisure, and again, right there on the computer, the path to enlightenment, how many human beings are actually even interested in that? And how many are working on climbing the corporate ladder, getting the next house, worrying about the next vacation, getting that house with a white picket fence, or in our place, maybe that great straw bale with a nice compost garden in the back, and that's our focus. And trying to just make this life comfortable. Well, that's what most humans are, right? And then if we get this little piece of us that says, there's something more. There's something more. Everyone here, and all of you online, you're here for a reason. There's a reason you're here. You've noticed something. You've noticed that all those outer conditions have not cultivated an elimination of suffering, have they? Right? Whether it's the best climate-controlled bed in the world, or the remote that starts your car when it's cold outside, and the heated seats, you're still subject to a vast array of mental afflictions and suffering. Doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how comfortable the environment, there's still this propensity of depression, frustration, anger, resentment, insecurity, fear, loss, sadness that is just pervasive. Worry. It doesn't matter how much we try to lock ourselves in a room somewhere. Dalai Lama, I watched this one on anger, he's just saying, I can shut the door and seal everybody off and still cannot run from my own mind. And where's this coming from? So our initial motive sometimes here is to really address the idea that I'm suffering. And by suffering, I'm really talking about the mental afflictions. I mean, there's the natural pain that just is there, the pervasiveness of aging, sickness, and death that we talk about. And everybody's subject to that. But there's a vast array of mental afflictions that have no other source except my own mind. And no matter how I try to change the world around me so I can be happy, it just doesn't work, does it? It just doesn't work. So we come and we seek. We've lost friends and family. We've had hardships. We've had really wonderful things in our life, and there's still something. There's still something that we notice that there has to be more. I mean, is the meaning of my life for me to just try to get lucky every day? That things will go my way, that my car will start, and that I'll meet the right people, and I won't get robbed, and I won't get leukemia, and just really hope that I get really lucky every single day, and try to make it as much fun as possible? Is that the meaning of my life? And for some people it may be, in which case I hope they're really lucky a lot. But we don't have really much power about anything outside of ourselves, whether the government stays open or not, whether so-and-so's elected or not, whether gas prices are over $4 a gallon or now they're down to $2.30, whatever, whether my car starts today or not, whether or not I'm alive tomorrow or not. In fact, this life that we have is very transient, and the ups and downs of it and the ebb and flow, we ultimately don't have a whole lot of control over those types of things. And yet, we'll spend a lifetime trying to get those things just so. It's that ducks in a row, right? Ducks in a row. And yet, if they're all in a row, anything can change in a moment, and ultimately, this body's going to end. And at the end of that life, all of my angst and worries and fears and concerns were wrapped up into things that ultimately probably didn't matter. whether so-and-so likes me, whether or not I got this deal, whether or not that job happened. It's just this fascinating example of delusional aspects of trying to find some inner peace and happiness in all the wrong places, when it's really coming from us. The source of our suffering, mental afflictions, here, not there. It's the most comprehensive delusion of our time, is that my suffering is coming from somewhere out there, and if I can just fix that, I'll be happy. And it's strong. But somewhere we've realized this, and that's why we're here. We're understanding that there's more to this than I'm seeing. And so the Buddha's path is a path to remove suffering, to remove mental afflictions, to remove the source of all those mental afflictions, which is ultimately coming from us. And there's a path to end suffering. And so in this path, he says that there's some human beings that are ripe. And you're ripe. You have the rare and precious human rebirth. You have all the resources. You have the potential of enlightenment. You have access to the teachings. And you're interested in the teachings. That's the piece that all these others, even if they have all the resources, they're not that interested. They're just not that interested. And there's not enough level of uncomfort to have them look yet. And then even of those who are interested, there's a precious few that show up. Because, we could do something else on Wednesday night. Right? So, we want to take some time and really look at how rare and wonderful an opportunity we have. That we right now have an opportunity to just transform our existence. That the real life that we have is this precious treasure. And it's really easy to forget that. It's really easy to think about other things. It's real easy to get caught up into temporary pleasures that don't last and become actually the source of our suffering. Because it's the very things that we put all that energy into, that we worry about, that we stress over, that create our problem and our mental afflictions. So how do we get out of this cycle? Well, number one is we have to realize that right now is the time. Right now I have all the conditions. This human life that you have right now is not going to last. And the rarity with which these are created, for those of you here last week and on, the idea of a rare and precious human rebirth often takes eons of manifestations to have. It just doesn't come easy. It just doesn't come easy. And you have it. So we have it right now. So the idea is, if I actually realize it, I'm not going to waste it. I'm not going to waste it. Here's a life that can actually achieve enlightenment. Here's a lifetime that is ripe. And one of our biggest problems is that we really don't believe that we can be enlightened. That's for other people. These are these high beings that have achieved so much and they know so much and they're there. But where did they start? They started as a human being with a rare and precious human rebirth. And you have that. And right now in this state, every breath you take can bring you to enlightenment. Everything that we do can be transformed to the path if we start paying attention and not take it lightly, if we don't waste it. So how do we start this? So in order to start achieving our immediate goals, wouldn't an immediate goal be something like, I'd like to suffer a lot less? Even if I don't believe in rebirth, even if I don't believe in all of the things of multiple lives, right now, in this form with these teachings, you can remove a lot of your mental afflictions and feel better. You can make that Titanic really comfortable. And that's not a bad motivation at all. The motivation to live without a lot of stress, worry, fear, or anger, or hurting people, and that we can actually do that right now. We can do that by starting to pay attention. Starting to actually pay attention. Where is the source of my suffering and where's the source of my happiness? Start paying attention to my misperception about the nature of reality and the things that are going on and where my mind is. is so much of our life, our mind is not here in this moment. And so we can actually, by paying attention, transform the experience of our life and start aligning it more with the nature of how things actually operate in the world. And that is that sort of course of mindfulness. And in that course of mindfulness, we can actually use a lot of techniques to transform the experience of this moment. So Thich Nhat Hanh has a lot of great techniques in his tradition. If we were to start paying attention, familiarizing ourselves, well, here's a day that will never come again, which is true. I mean, here's just, the next teaching will be on that sort of thing about impermanence. But if I were to start paying attention to the fact this day will never come again, and where am I and where do I want to be, well, let's bring those to mind. When he has this one, when you get in your car, before you start your car, breathe. Stop and ask yourself, where are you going? And why am I going there? And let me be present when I drive. When the phone rings, right? It's a practice we've talked about. That first ring, don't just jump on the phone. Let that ring be a reminder, a mindfulness bell, so that when I answer this, may I be present and alert and helpful to whoever's on the end. When I'm, within our traditions, we have the things when we're sweeping the floor. Be there and sweeping the floor. And why am I sweeping the floor? Well, nice to have a nice, conducive, clean environment, but we can also transform the idea that I'm sweeping away the delusions of anger and resentment in my mind and cleaning up my own mind. You can transform very mundane activities into a spiritual path. And washing dishes, we're clearing away obscurations which are preventing me from being enlightened. It's a really nice practice by being here. And when you're doing that, you're not projecting about tomorrow and the next day and what's going on with that. You're not bringing up all this angst and fear about things I've already done. Or even, I think, the biggest thing that comes up so much is how much work I need to do on myself. That's a big one. I'm broken. And there's so much I have to do, and this is so hard. When in fact, right now in this moment, we're okay. We're just okay. Right? There's nothing to fix right now. There's nothing to fix. You have all of these potentials already here. And our path is really to just start paying attention to how we obscure our own Buddha nature. And we obscure it mostly by having a mind that's all over the place, dragging us around from one thing to the next, and latching onto things in a way that's not accurate. It's not accurate. That my happiness is going to be in some of those things. So start paying attention. I have this rare and precious human rebirth out of 7 billion humans, out of countless and endless amounts of other beings. I have this opportunity. Here's a day that's not going to come again. Familiarity. So the teaching we did at the Durango Dharma Center on Monday talked about 5 powers. And these 5 powers are something that we can really apply to enhance our experience of life. Number 1 is resolve. Just a resolve to not waste this life, to really cultivate and continue to be close to the idea of removing suffering in yourself and others, that I'm not going to waste this life. The familiarity of coming back again and again, bringing my thoughts back to the life that we want to have. And back to the nature of reality, a reminder that this day won't come again. Because if we don't bring it up, it just fades. It just keeps fading. It just keeps fading. I'm actually going to read this quote if I can pull it up real quick. We brought it on... I've alluded to it a lot, and I never get it right, so I'm going to see if I can pull it up real quick. If not, we'll just move on, but the idea of familiarity is something in the West I think we just so much overlook. we we constantly read that one book and we get the knowledge of that book, and then we put it down, we read another book, and then we read something else, and I go to that teaching. I might even take notes. One of these days I might read those notes, and we're on to the next thing. And so the idea in the Lamrim is that we receive this teaching, and that, so last week we talked about rare and precious human rebirth, that we think about that during the week, that we spend a little time meditating, we bring it to mind. And so here's the Thoreau quote. I always keep alluding to it, and I hack it, so I've got it in writing. As a single footstep will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. And, we can see the truth in that. The familiarity is to really, again, every single day when we wake up, know this is a day that will never come again. This is a day where I have a life that's taken me eons to get. This opportune physical form is more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. Right now, this life can obtain enlightenment. So hard to get, so easily destroyed. We've worked lifetimes for this. So easily destroyed. We can be gone in a heartbeat. In order to stay alive for any period of time, there's so many factors. Really, the meditation on that is like a little candle that's outside in the wind. It might stay lit tonight, it might not. So hard to get, so easily destroyed, it's like a lightning flash in the sky. Contemplate this, and you will see that all worldly action, all this stuff we get caught up in, is but worldly chaff. And night and day we must extract the essence of this life. We need to remember what's really important. At the time of death, what's going to matter to you? Even if you're not Buddhist, even if you don't believe in the next lifetime, what's going to matter to you? That's the thoughts that need to come up again and again. And in this life, what's important? And is it how I treat my neighbor? That might be important. Is it how I show up in the world? That might be important. Is it whether I cultivate really the understanding of phenomena where I can remove suffering from myself and others? That's pretty good. Am I making the best use of this life? Am I taking this opportunity to really nourish the opportunity of enlightenment right now? We need to bring it to mind, because otherwise it just fades and something else comes up and my friend's calling and I'm doing something else and those bills got to get paid and blah, blah, blah. And yet we can make all of those worldly activities a path to enlightenment if we start paying attention, remembering why we're here and remembering the nature of phenomena. So there's three, within Lamrim, they talk about 3 levels of motivation, or 3 types of people. And so you have this lifetime, well, there's 3 levels you can take it to. 3 levels. So one is the idea that I don't want to waste this life. I don't want, to be born into a next life that, might have no opportunity for Dharma practice. I don't want to be born into the next life of, what was the analogy? Like a duck on a lake. Ducks are nice, lakes are nice, but I'd rather not be quacking around if I can have a path to enlightenment. That at minimum, I want to use this life, if I'm not enlightened in this lifetime, that in the next lifetime I'm continuing on a path, that I have an upper rebirth and a path to enlightenment, that I'm continuing this trajectory to enlightenment, which you are on. So that's a good motivation. That's a good motivation for that. And so we call that, the first level of motivation. And the idea that I'm going to use this life to its fullest, and in order to really cultivate that, the number one thing is ethics. If you want to complete this trajectory, ethics. I need to stop doing things that are constantly creating negative karmic imprints in my life. So ethical behavior, that is the way to another higher rebirth. Number one, ethics is the foundation of all spiritual growth. And by ethics, we have these top 10 lists on ethics, body, speech, and mind that we've talked about before. But ultimately, we really want to be understanding my motivation into why I'm doing things. Am I doing things out of attachment and aversion? Am I harming people and things? Or am I coming from a place that is out of harmlessness, out of goodwill, out of a sense of renunciation in the delusion that these outer circumstances are the source of happiness? Or am I living in the real world with a sense of renunciation, of goodwill, and of harmlessness? Am I asking myself the most important question when I do something? What's beneficial? What's the most beneficial thing I can do for me and others in this moment? Well, if we're not there in that moment, we can't ask the question. And that's where that mindfulness of coming back to here's the day that will never come again, and what's really going to matter at the time of death in this situation. Am I thinking short term? Am I thinking long term? It's the same thing when we teach our kids, right? You get the sour cherry pie after dinner. You don't eat the sour cherry pie and have no dinner, right? That delayed gratification. If there's no cause, there's no result. If I really want to be free of mental afflictions, I need to actually do something now that gets rid of them and stop just entrenching them. So stop putting off till tomorrow my practice. Stop putting off tomorrow my contemplation. Stop forgetting that this day will never come again. Bring it to mind and ask ourselves, how do I want to use this life? So this initial scope, there's these teachings that will get you to the next life, which are really founded on exactly what we've been talking about. If you want to get somewhere, you want to understand the impermanence of this life. If I know this body is going to come and go, I'm going to be much more motivated to use it well. And 2, ethics. You really need the ethics. So the initial phase of this path is spending some time reflecting on ethics, the benefits of that, as well as the very temporary physical form that we have, impermanence. The second level, and the idea isn't that we just go to the third level. There's 3 levels. Because, we're in the West, we want 3 levels. I want third, And, but that we start. So I actually think people start before the first level, personally. And that first level is just simply, I don't want to suffer so much. I would really like to participate in life without worries and fears and stresses and anger and resentment and jealousy. I just love to do that. And that's really the initial coming in the door. And I think that that's an okay place to start, really. And if this starts to work in this life, well, then I start thinking about, okay, beyond this life. And that first phase is, well, I want to make sure I don't waste this life, that I stay on a path of rebirth that continues the path to enlightenment. Level 1. Level 2 is, well, having reflected on, I can get another good rebirth. I can stay on a path. But as long as I keep taking form, I'm subject to karma and conditionings and the cycle of rebirth endlessly. And the second level is, I want to get off the loop. I want to obtain nirvana. I don't want to be constantly blown around by, like a feather in the wind, my karmic imprints just blowing me around to this form and that life and that attraction, this thing, that habit and that conditioning, again and again and again, just floating around, forced into different forms based on karma, surrounded in delusion. And according to these teachings, you could have, well, actually, according to these teachings, we have all been in heaven realms, we've all been in hell realms, we've all been animals, we've all been human, again and again and again and again and again and again. And now we have this rare and precious human rebirth. And you can get liberated. So the second motivation, the second level, they call the medium scope, is to obtain nirvana. To remove yourself from all the conditionings of these imprints that keep us in a conditioned cycle of samsara. And so the Theravadan path really applies to that. That's the 3 higher trainings. Ethics, concentration, wisdom. Ethics, again, notice that keeps popping up. As a matter of fact, everywhere we go, it'll still pop up. So the second level is really that we can use this life to obtain release from conditioned existence, from all that karma controlling it. And that's the path of 3 higher trainings, the Eightfold Path, that we did the whole teachings on that Eightfold Path. Ethics, concentration, wisdom. And then there's the third level. And the third level is that, I can remove myself from conditioned existence. I can work on obtaining nirvana. But that doesn't necessarily help all of you. And this third path, they call a bodhisattva path, the highest scope, is the idea that I can obtain complete enlightenment for myself and help all other beings be free of suffering. And in this path, we would actually say that even though you've obtained nirvana, you're not a completely enlightened being, that there's these stains of karmic imprints that are still there. But you can actually be entirely removed, and that's a bodhisattva path, a Mahayana path, a path of complete enlightenment. And that comes with compassion training for the benefit of all sentient beings. And for that, the path is these 6 perfections. Generosity, ethics again, patience, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom. And then it takes into the Vajrayana path. And that is the ultimate scope of motivation that can obtain complete Buddhahood for yourself and provide the conditions to help remove suffering of all others. It's the highest motivation, the highest scope. So the Lamrim wants you to know all 3. The Lamrim wants to include everything. And the Lamrim wants you to know that there's value in all of them. And there's sequential. So, instead of just going to, I want complete enlightenment for all beings, let's first start with, I'd like to suffer less. Let's start with, let's just work on my ethics and understanding the nature of impermanence. And then as that comes to fruition, as I start to see suffering, as I start to see my life get better, really paying attention to the source of suffering and not my mental afflictions, and understanding these days are so temporary and I don't waste them, then I get to expand into the 3 higher trainings. And I start to see, wow, this life in this lifetime is already getting better. And I'm already seeing a continuity of consciousness that can take me to the next life. Then arises the idea, how about getting off this cycle altogether? How about really going to the root of all my suffering and getting it out of this conditioned existence? And then that's the second scope. And that's where we really put the 3 higher trainings into practice. As we do that, and we get these tastes of the non-dual nature of reality through a very purified mind, then we start thinking, wow, what about all my brothers and sisters? What about all beings? And then this manifestation of the Mahayana path of the 6 perfections can come to fruition. But it's sequential, and it's also sequential in the point that sometimes people will say these teachings are more important than those teachings. And the whole point of this is to say, no, those teachings are actually part of these teachings. They're a part of this path to enlightenment. These are not inferior teachings. That we understand that Dharma we can find on this path has a purpose and a point. And so the Lamrim really seeks to show you the whole path and show you the purpose and meaning of these teachings so that you know where they go and they know on the path and that they serve us. Now, when we practice this path, Can I have in my mind, yeah, I really want to wind up in full Buddhahood and liberate all sentient beings? We can have that in the mind. That's my ultimate goal. But right now, in my immediate, I need to understand these basic foundational principles so I can get there. So that's fine. We hold that in mind, but we come back to each of these meditations along the path again and again and again. And within Lamrim, these methods are, if I take some time and I truly contemplate this teaching, and the idea is that we meditate on each one of these. First precious human life. And I actually get a taste of it. Not just, John's up here telling you you have a rare life. Go check it out. Go look at 7 billion other people. Go look at your opportunity. Take a look. See if that makes sense. See if you have opportunity to remove suffering. Contemplate. Does that hold up? And if I think about it, if I see what a gift I have right now, you actually have time to practice. You have these teachings. And look, are there people who've been on this path that you admire? Are there people on this path that you've seen that have demonstrated cessation of suffering? Are they there? Yeah. Think about it. See if it makes sense. One thing I'll guarantee it will make sense real quick. You can be dead tomorrow. That's next week's talk. I shouldn't tell you that. Nobody will show up, huh? They're like, let's go hear the death talk. That'll be fun. Yeah. So, but really thinking about this opportunity and really starting to think about, what do I want to do with my life? That's really the essence of this teaching today. What do you want to do with this life? I mean, is the meaning of life just, having a nice house, some friends and some family, a nice ski trip once in a while? Is that really the meaning of your life? Is that what you want to do with it? Is that the purpose? Is that going to matter to you at the time of death? Whether or not you believe in rebirth, what's the meaning of your life? What do you want it to be? And do you have those conditions right now to make that happen? Do you have, when we think about a meaningful life, is that one that's filled with some sense of living a life that was meaningful and helpful to yourself and others? I mean, when you die, what's really going to matter? That's what we want to think about now in this rare and precious opportunity. And you have it right now. We have this incredible conditions right now. And how much of our day do we spend just wrapped up in a lot of mundane activities, worrying and stressing about things that at the time of death are just not going to matter? I mean, that's our task this week, is to think about. And in order to think about it, pause. When you get in that car, where are you going? When you wake up, remember this day will never come again. When that phone rings, breathe. And remember there's another living being on the other end. When I taught high school, I would have my students come in, and I would have them pause, and I would ask them a question. Where are you? And why are you here? Why are you here? Because, they'd forget. They're just going to sixth period. And they were just messing around with so-and-so, and it's this and that. Oh, man, we got another class. But when they paused and I asked them why you are here, they knew why they were there. They were actually in school because they wanted to have an opportunity in life. Granted, they didn't act like that. I worked in a rough inner city type school where, a lot of nonsense going on. But when they would pause, they would remember that. I'm here. I'm actually showing up because I don't want to be another statistic. That I actually want to have an opportunity in this life. They would remember that. How many times do we stop and ask us, why am I here today? Why am I here? What do I want to do with that? And across the board, I would have my daughter, when she did her chores, I would, watering the grass was the classic. Yeah, before you go out and, do whatever, you got to go water the grass. So she'd run out and squirt some water over that, and Gary would go and say, why are you watering the grass? Because you told me to. Why would I ask you to? Because we want the grass to grow. Do you like it when we have nice grass out there? She goes, yeah, I like it. Okay, let's go water the grass and remember why you're watering the grass. We're providing this precious water so it can grow. And then she'd water it a little better. Anything we're doing, why am I doing this? Am I doing the dishes to be done with the dishes? You know? When I clean my environment, am I cleaning it to have a really conducive environment? To be healthy and well. My place is often a reflection of my mind. You know, is that there? We need to be here to make that choice. So we need to ask ourselves, what's the most beneficial thing to do right now that I'll feel good about tomorrow? That I'll feel good about the next day? And what about an even deeper question? Am I doing anything right now that I would feel bad about if somebody else found out? Huh? That's that whole sign of characters, is what people do behind closed doors. Isn't it nice to live a life where you have nothing to hide? Or if anybody in the world found out what you were doing, it would be all right. Talk about liberation in this lifetime. That's a pretty good one. It's a goal to strive for. So if we can, this week, take some time and remember, that's your assignment, is to remember a day that will never come again. Remember the opportunities you have, the opportunities that you can live a meaningful life, the people that you can help, the use that you can make of this lifetime to remove suffering in your own lifetime. You know, that I can do a little meditation so I can train my mind. That I can be present so I can be here to make a choice. That I can keep bringing my mind back to a state of non-forgetfulness. And non-forgetfulness in the sense that there's not forgetting this day will never come again. Not forgetting what's important to you. Asking yourself, how do I want to live a day that will never come again? Again and again and again. That power of familiarity. The third power of that talk on the 5 powers was the idea of positive seeds. Which means basically every event in your life is an opportunity to grow. Everything that happens in your life is an opportunity to grow. Whatever happens, how I respond to it, I can either cultivate merit and wisdom, or I can flush it down the toilet. Right? I can plant the seeds of anger, resentment, and jealousy, frustration, and worry, or I can use whatever's arising and ask myself, what's the healthiest way to respond? How can I cultivate merit and wisdom here? That's easy to forget, and we're human, and we're going to forget. That's why the Thoreau quote is we want to bring it back up and up and up. Everything that's happening, you know, we need to not exaggerate it. How terrible this is, how awful that is, you know. It's the nature of life. Challenging things happen all the time. But it's not the thing itself, it's how I'm relating to it that's causing the suffering. And everything that happens I can relate to is, how can I grow? How can I grow from this? What can I do how can I respond to this? I was talking to a friend this weekend in Durango. He belongs to some men's group. I'm trying to remember their quote. Their quote was, "My work is my reaction." I like that. That's my job. Whatever happens, I really want to work on how I react, how I respond. I like that. I like that. I didn't join the men's group, but I like that. But you'll find these universal wisdoms in all types, and that's why you really want to understand different paths have different offerings. But they have a purpose, and what a great thing to respond to whatever's arising in a way that can cultivate merit and wisdom. So, Lamrim now talks about knowing you have a precious and a rare and precious human rebirth, and now knowing how to utilize it. And you can utilize it cultivating these 3 levels all the way to enlightenment, that there's 3 types, and they're sequential. And that this lifetime, we can use it to cultivate all 3 sequentially. And so from this point on, our first meditation is we have it, and that this life can obtain our immediate as well as ultimate goals, going within 3 levels. And the next stage will go through these different levels of meditation. So we invite you that every week that we offer a teaching to take a little time and think about the teaching. And if you forget what was said here and you didn't take notes, we do upload these online so you can review. But really, from my point of view, I think if you took a little time each day to keep asking yourself, what's the best way to use this day that will never come again? And check in on how much opportunity you have compared to others. And you can just watch. Look at how others suffer. Look at your friends. Look at people you see. And look at how much anger and resentment and frustration. Look at how much people agonize over trivial events. And how much they suffer over big events. And look at how can I transform the events that are happening in my life into a path to enlightenment. These are things to think about. So this week, that would be our first set. So this is technically the second meditation. First one is how rare and precious the life. And now, how you can use this life. How can you use this life in a way that's meaningful to you, for the path. Okay. That's about right on time. Is there, we have a couple minutes, so if there's any questions or anything that had arisen, I'd be happy to answer that, and I'll just pause, take a drink, and oops, that's a fizzy water. And if not, we'll do a dedication. There is, we're following an outline on the Lamrim Chemo, and so there is the whole outline to each topic and everything. Some people have asked, and we've emailed the outline. There's the book. There's a 3-volume book, Lamrim Chemo, that takes through that. And, there's several books on it. But we also have suggested some people read Liberation in Palm of Your Hand, which is a really nice condensation. It's not exactly Lamrim Chemo, but it's a Lamrim teaching that puts all the pieces together in a nice way in one book, as opposed to 3 volumes, or the 5-volume commentary on the 3-volume, etc. But we really want to make this practical. We want these teachings to go directly as transmitted within the Gelug tradition, which is my tradition, and go through this outline, but make it very practical for us in our modern world and the conditions that we're in. Okay. All right, we'll do a little dedication. Again, if you want to volunteer or be on a committee, we could use some support for that for the monks to come. And I see Shannon back there. And those of you online, if there's anybody close, you can join up too. And anyone else has any questions, just email us. So hope all of you out there are well and healthy. And let's do our dedication. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we've accumulated, both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. Let us dedicate this to the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use both the virtue and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to obtain complete enlightenment for ourselves and all sentient beings. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Another wonderful opportunity to share with you. And all of you online, be well. And all of you, try to stay out of trouble.